Otsu here. Who else would it be? This is Observations with Otsu. It's April 17th, so a little bit later in the week than I usually do it. Usually do this on Sundays or Mondays. Today is Thursday where I am at. Might be Friday where you are. Doesn't really matter because we're going to focus on the weekly time frames. As you guys know, I have a variety of videos. If you don't, go ahead and look at my YouTube, like, subscribe if you enjoy any of my content because I'm starting to come out with new types of content of different variations. Mondays, I'm going to be doing observations with Otsu. I'm also going to be doing different types of video series. Tactical trading is going to be one of them. Another one's just going to be kind of, different types of, chart analytics and things like that. So I got another one coming up on ranking different AIs as far as like feeding them crypto strategies or trading strategies, I should say, and see which one performs the best. So go ahead and look forward to that. I had a few issues going on this week. I had some car trouble, things like that. So I got delayed, and such is life, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of the introduction. What we're going to do today is look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana on the weekly. We're also going to take a look at Bitcoin dominance chart. We're going to take a look at maybe a couple of the total market caps. And then we'll probably look at ETH BTC and Solana BTC as well. So go ahead and stay tuned, like, subscribe. Let's get started. First of all, I want to do a few overarching things. We got the Bitcoin chart on here. We're going to kind of reserve this for now, but I do want to look at the Bitcoin dominance chart first. And so this is kind of giving us an outlook of where we're at. We're at about 64% and we're climbing. This is something that we are continuing to do on the weekly. Pretty much, was this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles in a row? So about almost 2 months now that we've just been going straight up. And honestly, this is par for the course when you get market uncertainty like the tariffs and everything like that. You tend to focus on the assets that are probably going to be more focused. And so I mentioned this in a different video, I think in the Monday Bitcoin brief video, which is another new series I'm doing, that dominance chart going up does not necessarily mean that Bitcoin is going up in price. Now, for the past couple weeks, it has, but not for the past 2 months. And so, not always, but it typically the trend is the higher dominance goes up in price, the lower the price actually becomes on Bitcoin. So that's not always true. So just keep that in mind. But generally, or I should say the market, I should say, I meant to say the market as a whole tends to go down. Now, again, that's not always correct, but that seems to be the trajectory. Now, another thing that you want to notice too is when you have the dominance goes down, that tends to be when altcoins start to rally a little bit. Okay, and so this was something that we looked at before, and so so this was really the top of the the alt market back in 2018, and once the dominance starts to go up, that tends to be the bear market beginning. So you you this doesn't really say anything at this stage because we're already high up from the lows here. Okay, this is something that when Bitcoin was around this area, that's roughly when it was around $20,000. Now we've kind of approached a different framework as far as the dominance goes. My thing is I'm looking for this top here at about 64.37. We're getting pretty close. And if that fails, we're looking at about 71%. Okay. And so that's pretty much the highest. I think we went as high as about 70. Yeah. I was going to say 74, but about 73 and a half. It's the highest that we've been in the duration that I've been here. I joined late 2017, back when dominance was about 65%. So it's kind of approaching where it used to be. When and we're kind of in this weird range right here from the 70 to the 60 marker. Okay, it's not perfect. Doesn't have to be. A lot of people want to make the dominance chart some sort of fancy verbatim thing. I look at this as just a rough guide. I don't do technical analysis on this as much as other people do, because I don't think that you should. Same with market cap charts, which we'll get to in the total market cap here in a second. But with this is kind of the range I'm looking at. In fact, I'll probably do this a little bit better here with the fib block here. And so this is roughly what we're looking at. The mid range is getting pretty close. We'll see where this goes. What I'm looking, and so what's the point of me, showing you this chart? What I'm looking at is I'm looking to try to get a rejection on this zone at some point. Okay, And that doesn't necessarily have to be now, but it has to be at some point. Okay, we have a bearish wedge coming up on the Aaron. It's a low conviction wedge, so that makes me think that the bulls are going to continue, or the bulls will continue on the dominance chart, which doesn't necessarily mean that the market's going to go up. Okay, so just be clear. It doesn't mean it's going to go down either. It just means the dominance is going to go up. You got to understand the frame of reference. A lot of people's mistakes is they try to correlate too many things, and that's why I take such a bearish stance on correlation. It's not that you can't correlate it, it's because that is a very dangerous chemical mixing application where that could blow up in your face, figuratively speaking, right? And so that's the thing. You should not always correlate the stock market. You should not always correlate gold. You should not always do this or that. You should take these individually, and the market cap dominance is a good example of that. Okay, because you don't want to correlate too many things, because then you start to make things attached to one another, and you're like, well, this isn't working, so this must be this, and this must be this, and none of that's even true. You're just making the charts connect dots where there's no dots, right? Um, and so that's kind of what I'm looking at. And so what I want to see is some sort of weakness, some sort of divergence, or maybe attached up here at the highs. We don't get very high on the dominance chart as much as we usually do on other charts. Usually the high here is about 75%. We're at about 69. So we're getting pretty close here. And so in almost every single time we get some sort of rejection, even a small one here. I mean, we say small, but that would take a couple months, honestly. And so we'll see how that goes. I think the dominance is looking pretty good. I think also the dominance is par for the course to try to get the market matured again, to get some sort of interest back into the market. There's not a lot of liquidity here. And I blame pump fund and other things for that, and maybe the tariff stuff, but overall interest does have to come back. And so in order to do that, the dominance has to go up. In order for people to, this is not always true, but to put money into meme coins or altcoins, they need to have Bitcoin probably, or at least have that available. And that seems to be the case. This doesn't look anything different than any other cycle. Like, a lot of people want to really say this cycle's different. There's other things going on just because the government's involved, blah, 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 blah. But the charts are telling us the same exact thing every cycle. Okay, this is a very prolonged dominance chart. We have not seen this really ever to this great length, and so we'll see how this works out. Maybe nothing comes up of it. There is there is some insight that maybe altcoins are done. I don't think so, but we'll see. So anyway, that's the dominance chart. Let's go ahead and go to the total market cap and kind of see what we're working with here. So this is the weekly. I'm going to mainly spend time on the weekly. So if you want something lower, this is not the video for that. That's usually my Bitcoin brief videos that are the 1 day time frames and the 4 hour time frames. I almost always spend either on the 4 hour, 1 day, or 1 week. Very rarely do I do something else, maybe the tactical trading series, what have you. But this Observations with Otsu is a weekly video series. So one thing I'm looking at on the weekly here is that we have very close to recovery here. This is not quite the recovery. This is basically a touch of the highs here. Excuse me. And so with that, that does give us some hopium on that. I will briefly go into the daily here, where we did break above the daily. And so based off of this structure, you could consider the weekly time frame as broken, as a good thing, as it broke the flip of that level. And I can see why you would think that. Even the Aaron is saying it is low conviction cross here at 32%. So that's not that bad, okay? And so that's something good that we are working with. You have a very wide bullish consolidation with a 92 on the upside, 14 below. So you have roughly like about was it 80% or so. And that's pretty good. No momentum just yet. You got to get above 50 for that. But this is looking pretty solid. No divergence, nothing like that. I think there was one on the 3 day here. And so we do have a divergence here on the 3 day. I just said I wouldn't visit other time frames, and I just did two of them. But this is looking pretty good. I'm under the impression that this is bullish here. Okay, we have a level here to work with. This blue area, I think, is probably what people's concerns are. To actually get really bullish, you need to get above to about 2.8 trillion. So we'll see how that goes. I think this looks great. I really do. And so I don't see any reason. And I always rant, so I'll try to make this very very minimalistic here. But a lot of people are really trying to focus on the tariffs and all these other news, and they're panicking and things like that, and it's just not doing you any good, in my opinion. Okay, the only thing it should be helping you do is to not trade if it's not comfortable to do so. Okay, but you still got to look for opportunities. So let's go to total two. This one's a lot different. This does exclude Bitcoin, so Ethereum is going to be the main weight for this one. Hitting at the lows, I still think this isn't too bad on the daily. You're getting this inverse C fork with a break that looks pretty decent overall. You got the bullish consolidation trying to curl up to a cross, so that's probably going to. It doesn't look too bad long term, but again, Ethereum is really weighing this down. You have a large consolidation here at about 85% of a gap with the 72 and 7 combined. We'll see how this goes. Not exactly impressive, and that's mainly because of ETH. We'll get to ETH here in just a little bit. In total, three is going to be another one that we looked at, and this is one that's going to be without Bitcoin and ETH. So Solana and XRP and Sui, those are going to be your main heavy hitters here in the lineup. You're below resistance here, so this tells me that this is very similar to Bitcoin with the total one market cap that has Bitcoin, but Bitcoin allows this to be a little bit more stronger, even with ETH added into it. And so I do think the market as a whole looks healthiest with all of the coins included. Okay, so that's not too bad. Now we're still within a big range here, and that's going to be, you know, it is good that we're holding the mid, but we still got to get above this level to get some comfortability out of this. Got the same gap here as the total two, a little bit better on the momentum actually, so a little bit different, and that's going to look there's going to be a difference in that when we look at Solana, because Solana has momentum right now, bullish momentum, and Ethereum does not. Okay, there's a very big difference between Solana and Ethereum right now, and the ecosystems are reflecting that. Solana coins are doing really good right now relative to the market. They're not doing amazing, but they're not doing terrible either. Whereas a lot of other coins on other ecosystems are very hit or miss. So this is how this looks. A little bit of hopium here. Again, needs to flip that zone. So those are the total one, two, three. I'm going to briefly, actually, we'll go into Bitcoin first, then we'll do Ethereum, Solana, and then we'll do the ETH. We'll do the BTC pairs after that. All right, so now we are on to the weekly chart here on Bitcoin. And so one thing we can see here is that no divergence here. I would like to see that we do, but we have a 50 EMA here propping that up. I think on the 3-day we do have a double bottom, and so that's pretty good. On the daily we do actually have a break here, and so this is good as well. You almost have like a kind of like an Adam and Eve or cup and handle sort of hybrid thing going on. I don't hold that in high conviction, but I think that is worth noting. The blue marker here on the trend does note that we have a bullish cross here at about 33%. That's a low conviction cross, but that's still worth something. That it means that the bears are kind of done for now. Now, whether we have enough momentum for the bulls remains to be seen. You got to usually wait about one candle or two, about 48 hours max, to see how that works. But going back on the weekly here, we had your big structure here, and we hit pretty close to this. I would consider this retested, even though it's probably not necessarily mathematically retested, and so that's something to look out for. We had the touch here on the EMAs, working pretty good. Same gap here on the RSI, and on the momentum, it's getting close to 50, which is a good marker to look forward to. One of the things I wanted to make note of here is the EMA 50, how it's kind of bouncing off this. I kind of focusing on the EMAs here because I think it does have some importance for the trend. And, and with those moving averages, we can see that we're well above this. We're not really even in the zone yet. Like, this does tend to be the case as we kind of have this little, notch, so to speak, like this divergent style. It isn't a true divergence, obviously, but it does tend to tap into the 50s. That's kind of what that's doing now. It's a sign that we are kind of dabbling into the demand here, or and working with that moving average there. So that's kind of on par for the course. I mean, honestly, if you look at this from a different standpoint here, you usually have like this cluster with the EMA crosses and everything. And this is not perfect because keep in mind that the purple here is the 200 EMA and the blue is the 50 SMA. So a little bit different. But here you got the cross of the two EMAs. You got like this little cluster of price action combined with the cluster of moving averages. Then you can see it kind of retest the 50, and then it bounces back through. It retests the 200, retests against the 50 from the upside, and then rejects that, and then it goes forward to there. That's kind of your bear market, right? For here, you have that same cluster with this cross. Actually, the cross was a little bit, late compared to the price action going, upwards. We had one retest here, and now we have a second one. And so this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to cross here, By the way, like there's no instance necessarily on how often this should happen. Um, I mean, if you want to take that stance, then you would say that this does eventually come down, but we'll see how that goes. We did not get this response here at the 50 on this level. It's pretty much little minor consolidation and then a drop down. We're not getting that here. We had um, you kind of a inverse V shape, or I guess an A or whatever you want to call it, into the 50, and then we bounced pretty well off of that. Now a lot of people want to argue the tariffs and like it caused the reaction, whatever. Again, here's the thing: 10 years from now, you're going to look at this as just part of the chart, okay? And that's how you should view it now. And that's the thing, because otherwise, you might as well start labeling every single candle as some sort of news event. And again, that goes to why I don't try to correlate news necessarily, because I could label every single one of these candles with something going on, every single one, positive or negative, okay? And so are you going to do that, or are you just going to look at the charts how it is? Okay. If you are going to correlate news and data together, then you should just never look at the charts to begin with. And I mean that with all sincerity, because you're always going to try to find a justify a way for the news to make sense. But then you also should be, marking these with the label tool on here where all this news is coming from. Okay, because at the end of the day, the charts are still going to matter. In very rare circumstances, does the chart actually not fulfill the need that you're looking for with this chart. So that's pretty much Bitcoin in a nutshell. I can very briefly look at the daily. We just got this cross here. It's leading into this. It's actually crossing the 50 right now. We actually had a chance. We actually rejected it a few days ago, making the move up again now, possibly hitting the 200 here at about 87.5. So that is a worth considering, especially since we crossed on bullish on the ARN. So just something to keep in mind. So that is Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and go to ETH and ETH BTC. Now here is ETH on the weekly, and I'm just going to get rid of this here. And so my idea here, I did a video earlier this week called "Has Ethereum Bottomed?" and I gave 4 reasons to why I think that it has actually, and whether it does or it doesn't is not my concern. I gave 4 instances on why it could be bottomed, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be right. But that being said, as of right now, I still think that is the case. We held the weekly here from the last week's candle. This is a current weekly candle, and we're still roughly right where it is. And I think that's a good sign. If we can hold the weekly here, I think that's a very good sign. I don't understand why, even if this is bearish, I don't see why people would consider this as too risky here, because this is a good level retest. It hit the midline here. I won't cover everything I covered in the regular video. Go ahead and check that out. I'm going to leave a link in the description in the YouTube. And again, like, subscribe if you haven't. But you got the midline retest here. You have historic lows on the RSI is one of them. You have just the basic drop down, right? And so we've just from this price alone, it's 60% from basically from December, early December, and we're basically about 65 to 67% from the highs. And so I think that's in a pretty good position where we could bounce. A lot of that's theory, but some of that is based off back testing, right? And so that's kind of what we're looking at. We're still hovering here. You have a wide gap on the bullish consolidation, going to lead into a wedge. That's a good sign. 92%. That's as high as you can get. Usually indicates that we get a V-shaped reversal somewhere. Probably going to get that to about 1886 or 1900. We'll see. And so honestly, my big momentum here would be 2122, not 2000 like most people are thinking. We'll just see how that goes. I still think this is okay. I don't like this little gradual drop down, however. You can see it's kind of respecting the low part of that band. That's not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. So we'll see if it can hold. It really just depends on what else that we're looking at. But this is not a good sign typically. It needs to recover. I'd say probably before the weekly close at some point. Anyway, we will go to ETH BTC and see what we can take a look at this for this. And this is just a sad story. And this is one reason, like, I do this semi-jokingly because people don't really look at Bitcoin pairs anymore. And that's just par for the course. If you look at this from the swing low order block section, we're getting ready to hit the lows here at about 1.66. And so that's just basically it. We'd have another breaker here at about 1.18. But there's nothing really to signify. Like, this is just terrible, and this really just says more about and this says 2 things, obviously. And this is no surprise. Bitcoin is a very strong asset. All Bitcoin charts are eventually going to look like this. Okay, this also tells me that just Ethereum is pretty weak when it can't even recover a local zone. You have retest at a bearish retest here, bearish retest here, bearish retest here. Can't even get above a zone. Hasn't really done that at all, really since the highs here back in December 2021. So something to keep in mind. But ETH very lackluster performance. But let's see what Solana is doing. We're going to look at Solana and the Solana BTC chart. All right, so Solana here on the weekly, the biggest thing I want to look at here is, so you had your major level here from this zone. Pretty good level, very respected level. Solana typically respects traditional technical analysis as opposed to Ethereum, and even Bitcoin, honestly. I think Solana looks the best of the three. It behaves the best more often than not, despite the fact that a lot of people think it's just more wild with the meme coins. I think it's been very respectful, honestly. Had the double top here. That was a good sign to get out. And now we don't have a divergence here, but we did have a deviation. So this was your low hit based off of this breaker here, this swing high order block here. So that's why I drew out that chart. And you have a deviation reclaim to this zone. That's very good. Deviations, as anybody in my pay group understands, that I will annoy people with deviations. It's just a clear cut sign that the supply and demand did not meet each other properly and it had to reverse. That typically equates it's equated very similarly to like when people say sweep the lows, which I'm not a fan of because it takes a different pattern, right? But this one does indicate that we went too far too low, got the reclaim, got a good price movement reclaim. And so now something like this, you can tag your lows there, target the all-time high on that one, is roughly the all-time high, and you got a 3.75 at 96%. This is roughly what I'm looking at is for what Solana might be doing. Now this might take some time to do, just keep that in mind. But how do I look at this in actuality? First of all, you have the 200 EMA reclaim. If it can get above this zone, that is a very key distinction. The last time we visited that was October 23. Have not visited on this chart since then. If we did, it would have been somewhere around here, around $75 back in May 2022, if you have a more historical chart. Okay, so this doesn't happen very often. It's getting ready to happen here. It's making me very interested in Solana here again. And so we'll see where that goes. We have a band touch here coming up at about 148. Probably will stall there for a couple weeks and then bounce up above that. You also do have a or a bearish breaker here, I should say, at the low end about 167. So you're going to have a few different levels to work with. So don't expect this to be just some immediate run to like 260. This is going to take some time. It's going to take some levels, and it's going to probably get people excited to start trading Solana again, but it's going to make them a little bit impatient. And this is where like stacked bids like this is going to mess with people's minds, because people at that point will want to be bullish, but they're going to be too scared to trade because of the incremental touches and retests and things like that. But I'm pretty sold on the fact that Solana is the leader of the three right now, and it's doing pretty good. Let's go ahead and go to Solana BTC. This is going to round out the video, so to speak, and kind of see what we're going on. I got a lot of chicken scratch here, but I'll get rid of it all. This has some similar patterns to Ethereum, and that's by design, honestly, because you're going to end up getting these scythe patterns. That tends to be the case. We'll look at XRP just for fun. Very much different here. Very different, but it had a recent reclaim here. But we're going to go back to Solana BTC, just seeing what it's looking at. So, but with this here, you don't really have a big region. I mean, this is going to be your key region here. Okay, working with hit the mid zone, and so it kind of respects this, not quite, but probably close enough here. But just looking to reclaim, it actually reclaimed the mid, so this is pretty good overall. You're going to look at this from a mid-level standpoint. It needs to get a little bit higher, about 163 and some change there. Not looking too bad, but again, the Bitcoin charts are really going to be much more confusing than some of the other ones. But I think Solana on the US dollar pair and Tether pair looks pretty good. So overall, that's the update that I have. Just kind of a recap. I think Bitcoin looks pretty decent here, especially on the daily time frame. Weekly still has some time to go. I think that the lower time frames are kind of hit or miss. But I think the daily looks pretty good here to get some trend move above the 50, going to the 200. This is also why we're probably going to stall a little bit more, is because when you're going through multiple moving averages at one time, you do tend to get that cluster. And it's exactly what we got here, right? And so, and this could be like a chicken and egg situation, because the reason we're getting these clusters is because the supply and demand can't necessarily work itself out, and so the trends start to consolidate. And so, like what came first, and that's a debate in and of itself. But as far as the understanding goes, at current time frame, you're still looking at the 200 EMA needs to break. Going on to Ethereum, let's see right here. This isn't looking too bad here. This is another position I've looked at before. There we go. Mid level, I think it looks pretty good overall. Still needs some work, and this is going to depend on your personal conviction. If you're a big fan of Ethereum, you think it's going to work well in the future, then I think this is a good spot, honestly. And I don't see it really going any lower than like 1,000. I don't anticipate this at all going to three digits again. And we'll see. It's a 33% drop, but the lower it is, the more attractive this gets. So just understand that, right? And so that's something that you have to understand. And then going back to Solana here, you have the deviation recovery. I think it's going to go up to what, 167, 168, and I think that's going to work out pretty well. But we'll see how that goes. Solana is the best performing of the three right now. A lot of coins are in the green right now, so we'll see how this goes. Some of that doesn't mean they're performing well, just some recoveries, things like that. So anyway, that is the video. Let me know what you think. Go ahead, like, subscribe again if you haven't. Hope you enjoyed this video. Got more videos coming up just like this. I'll see you next time.